Good evening, Hooper.
And good evening to the listeners, everyone out there. It's 279 of our show, and it's Monday once again in
It
the
is.
city, the 23rd of November. The last, no, not the last Monday in November, but the last. By the time it releases, this will be the last show of November, the
Yes.
last show of NaNoWriMo, as the
Yeah.
writing community calls it. Have you been doing any writing during November?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
No, but it's on my to-do list.
You
I
put
am
You put
going
the
to be at
no in
home.
NaNoWriMo.
I put the no in November, my friend. I've got some time on my hands here in the next few weeks, so hopefully I'll get some writing done.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Yeah. I got a little bit done. I have a project I'm working on that is writing adjacent. It's got some writing to it, but I'm kind of in
Okay.
like the early like logging stages of it. So
Sure.
it was writing, but it wasn't like sitting down and like spewing thoughts.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this was when this. It was more like a journal almost.
Gotcha. Yeah, I did some, like beat sheet stuff and, just like preliminary work, which is always the most time consuming, at least for me, where it's like I just need to figure out the structure of this thing and how I want it to flow and who these characters are, and everything else kind of happens quickly-ish.
Yeah.
But it just seems like this first part just drags for me.
Again, that's why my project was so easy because it's there's other elements to it that are not writing that are just they're
Mm,
strangely similar to like my day job. So I've
sure.
sort of have like a process in place already for how I would tackle this
Right.
part of
Sure.
it.
Sure.
So it's very clinical so far.
Gotcha.
It's simply just logging facts.
Got
So
it.
if it were a book, you would call this like the research phase.
Research. Sure.
Right. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's fairly rudimentary, but it's like, okay, that this is perfect because it's not too much mental exercise, but it's enough of this thing to kind of get me in like a rhythm to it a little bit. So I knocked out
Yeah.
some time because I wake up really early during the week,
Hmm.
and so I finally got better at going to bed earlier during the week.
Yeah.
But like what they tell you is okay, so on the week because you know the whole thing about catching up on sleep,
Yeah.
that's not a real thing.
No, it's not.
It's not. So like what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to keep as regular a schedule as possible. I
Yep.
wake up at 3 in the morning, so I'm not going to do that on Saturday and Sunday. But I
Right.
can't just sleep till even with my kids. I still sleep until like 7, but
Sure.
that's still too much. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, what am I going to do? So I
Yeah.
pretty much shifted that 6 hours I get like lopsided a little bit to where I'm going to bed by like 11 and then I wake up at 5
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like okay, so I get up at 5, what do I do for 2 hours? And so
Right.
that's when I do that is
Sure.
that time. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
yeah, I'm trying to make it make sense. It's working okay so far. First weekend I tried it was just this past weekend and it
Sure.
went pretty well. So
Okay.
we'll see if we can keep that one going. Every time I
I
establish a routine, my children destroy it.
destroy it. My problem is I'm like Bruce Banner. My problem is that I'm always sleepy, and so there's like the idea of like, oh, a good schedule, or oh, going to bed on time. Like nothing works. I'm just always tired. Doesn't matter.
That's
It's hard
exactly
to wake up
my
every
thing.
morning.
Connor, how do you
Yeah.
fall asleep within minutes? That's my secret. I'm
It's my
always
secret,
sleepy.
Captain. I'm always sleepy.
And then like I do that turn, and, like my shirt rips off, and I'm just like, "Grr, oh."
Ugh, just in pajamas underneath. Suddenly you've got like one of those nightcaps on. Like,
A pillow just inflates next to my head.
yep.
Oh. And instead of like punching the Leviathan and growling, I like my head hits the pillow and I just go.
Yep.
It's not a roar; it's a big yawn.
A big yawn.
All right. Well, speaking of NaNoWriMo and writery things, so months ago, at some point, I talked about the prospect of what Quentin Tarantino was going to be doing after he stopped directing films. He
Hmm.
has said, I'm directing 10, And then after that, I'm gonna write books, or I'm gonna like
Yeah.
exclusively write screenplays, but I won't be like directing movies anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've kind of
I'm
reached
done.
my zenith there.
Yep. Yep.
So this is a follow up to that, because this is just to remind everyone that that is indeed what's going on with Quentin Tarantino. This is a story on Deadline. All the stories are in the show notes, by the way, if you want to actually read them, or if you hopefully you've already read them. But no judgment if you haven't. That'd be weird of me to hold that against you. Quentin Tarantino. what a strange expectation to put on the listener.
Right.
Well, hopefully you've read all of these already. Stupid idiot. What is this, a syllabus? Summer reading?
Participation is 20% of your grade.
Exactly. Quentin Tarantino has setting a 2-book deal with HarperCollins. So that's already, if you're an author, that's like, oh, that's a sweet payday there.
It's a good deal.
I know. HarperCollins is the real McCoy, as Bruce Nash would say.
Yep.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood novelization is going to be one of them, and then another. This calls it a 70s movie deep dive called Cinema Speculation. So he's already got the books, kind of. I'm assuming he's got them at least outlined. But I mean, Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Thinking of Robert Rodriguez.
Yep.
Because of his friendship with Quentin Tarantino. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is getting a novelization. So maybe you think like, oh, what a cop out. It's still a book that's written. It is different from the movie, if not just an expansion of it. And I don't know if you ever read any novelization of movies, Dustin, but I had the Spider-Man one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I think I read the Superman Returns one.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day.
And they're cool. I mean, if you've seen the movie,
Sure.
it's a good. I mean, that's the whole point of this. It's a companion piece, and because he says that's like what he grew up reading. That was like his. That was, what does he say? I want to read exactly what he said about those. He said that, in the 70s, movie novelizations were the first adult books I grew up reading, and to this day, I have a tremendous amount of affection for the genre. So as a movie novelization aficionado, I'm proud to announce Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, my contribution to this often marginalized yet beloved subgenre in literature. I'm also thrilled to further explore my characters and their world in a literary endeavor that can hopefully sit alongside its cinematic counterpart. Yeah, so it's like, hey, if you love the movie, you should check out the book because there's more in it. And the other is, again, a deep dive into 70s cinema, and which is, of course, way up his alley. Quentin Tarantino is a writer. It's not like he's a one-trick pony. I mean, he loves writing, and if you've ever read anything about his writing process, like the old ass word processor he uses to write them, and I believe that when he starts writing, he writes everything in prose. Period. Mm-hmm. So if it turns out to be something he wants to put into a movie, he's still like, okay, but I'm gonna write the prose. That's just that's his first draft process.
Yep.
And I remember when I learned that changed the way that I wanted to approach my own. Like, you have like a style, and especially if you grew up like we did, like we were taught screenwriting and playwriting. We were not taught novelization.
Right, correct.
We were taught all about show, don't tell, externalize everything, and make sure you know the format and keep it bare, because we don't like to see a lot of prose and scene direction on the screen. People hate that.
Yeah.
But that's like the opposite of when you're writing a novel. So it's like, well, what if you're writing a story and you don't know what it's supposed to be yet? And it wasn't until I read like Stephen King's book on writing and reading Quentin Tarantino's process of writing where it's like, oh, why don't you just approach everything like prose? Because the great thing about prose is you don't have to worry right away about externalizing stuff. You can just say, all right, well, okay, I already know what the character is thinking and feeling. Let's just do the thinking and feeling part. And then later, if I decide this should be a screenplay, well, I'll go through and make sure none of that stuff is, in here. I'll make sure it's all external.
Yeah.
But then if it's way better as a novel, I'll just turn it into a book. And that's what Tarantino does, and pretty much said, I'm just going to do that after I'm done directing films. So he wasn't kidding. He's got a book deal, a 2-book deal. And it's going to sell a buttload of copies, and
yes, it will,
and carry him further into his retirement as an artist.
Good for him.
I know, it's amazing. I'm not like the guy needs any more money, but like I'm just happy that I guess I like it when creative people can just go. I mean, like Gene Hackman retired from acting in like the mid 2000s, and
Yeah.
he's been writing novels for like 15 years,
Yeah. Right.
and like not a lot of people know that.
Right.
I'm sure a lot
Right.
of people listening are like, "Oh, that's right, Gene Hackman. I remember that
Right.
guy." I
Yep.
know, right? Where'd he
Yeah.
go? He's been writing.
Yeah.
He's been
He's
fine,
just been hanging out.
selling
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm happy. I'm happy that's happening, and of course, I'm interested. And the dude's never gonna run out of ideas.
No.
He'll just write it and go, "Cool. I don't have to do anything else. I wrote the story. That's
I
it."
wrote it and it's done. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and it's such a natural thing, especially for people involved in the film industry, because we're all in it for storytelling.
yeah,
From the lowliest PA to the highest director, everybody's in it for storytelling, and or should be. And so, yeah, it's an easy transition to understand where somebody would say, "Hey, I'm a director, but I'm now going to write books," or "I'm an actor, and now I'm going to write books," and that makes complete sense because it's scratching that itch that you always have had, just in a different way, and maybe in a more solitary, singular, auteur-ish way. You get to tell your story, presumably without limitation. And that's what, when you're talking about the novelizations, that the reason I got the Superman Returns novelization back in '06 or whenever that film came out was, uh, it promised additional content that the film didn't have. There was that whole sequence at the beginning. I don't know if anybody remembers Superman Returns. I certainly have a vague memory of it, and I'm a huge Superman fan. But there's like that whole sequence where Clark, it like comes back to Earth. Like the whole film starts with him coming back to Earth, and it's like, oh, he's been in space for X amount of years trying to find Krypton or whatever. And they just like gloss over it with like text on the screen, like Superman left, now he returns, and like that's it. And like the book gave all of that information that the movie didn't give.
right,
And evidently it was all written, and
right.
I think even Bryan Singer filmed some of it. It's
Really,
just he just cut it all out. I guess he figured it would just it's easier just to put text on screen than finish these VFX.
it's crazy that like the amount of money. I mean, you already hear about like productions where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
we're spending too much money or we need to save
Yeah.
money, but
Yeah.
it's like, but you'll shoot like weeks of footage that you don't end up using. I don't know
Yes.
whose fault that is, but I think David Fincher was saying it's like $400,000 a day.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a lot of
Yeah, and
money.
that's the thing. I remember at one point somebody had calculated what Bryan Singer likely spent on that it was like a 30-minute opening sequence of Clark or Kal-El, Superman, whatever you want to call him, exploring space, and it was all cut, every single bit of it. And it's like so much money wasted. If he had just cut it before he started filming, the film would have had a drastically smaller budget and probably would have turned a profit. I think it did, but it was still just a mild
Could have
success.
made
You
a
know what I mean?
bigger profit.
It would have made a bigger profit.
Yeah.
Ah, ah. Anyway, and then maybe we wouldn't have the Zack Snyder abominations, but oh well. Another
Sure.
another rant for another day.
Sure, exactly. You're not contractually allowed to say abomination though when you're talking about DC.
No, sorry.
Even resist
I'll
the
call it
temptation.
Doomsday. I'll call it Doomsday.
Mother.
There probably is a DC character called Abomination. There's such an overlap, and that's such a common. I'm looking it up right now.
Are you really? Yeah, I'm sure it's somewhere. Why isn't this loading?
Uh,
Nothing.
there may not be. Okay. Oh well.
I was gonna say that'd be a hefty lawsuit, wouldn't it?
I don't know. Abomination is. I don't know if that's a trademarkable term, but maybe it is. Who knows?
I don't know if they really want. I have to select the whole stupid link just to open it on my phone. I gotta find a better way to do this than opening links on my phone. Yeah, I would think that. I would think that they couldn't do that. I guess it depends on which character was
Yeah.
licensed or
Sure.
created first.
Sure.
Okay. Well, considering that the Wi-Fi is not going to let me open this article without putting half the thing in white, here we go. I got another tidbit of entertainment news concerning people, at least that I associate my attention to. Such a weird way to say that. On
Huh?
Variety, Conan O'Brien is ending the TBS show.
Yeah.
His late night show, Conan. I'm just gonna have to hold the phone over here, Dustin. That feedback is
Gotcha.
strong.
Yep. Yep.
Ending his late night show in 2021 and is going to have a weekly series, variety series on HBO
Mm-hmm.
Max.
Yeah.
He's coming home to Dustin.
Yes.
Strange way to say that too.
Right.
Ending Conan in June 2021. That's the announcement by Warner Media. Forget it, man. How can I? I'll just read it this way. Hello.
Hello.
I can't win, Dustin. This won't let me. How far can I hold my phone further?
I'm not hearing it right now.
Social distance from my phone.
Right.
The announcement marks the end to an 11-year run. I didn't realize it had been that long.
Yeah, man.
11 years.
11 years.
That's a long run for just a late night show, but consider how many different times he's jumped to a new thing.
Yep.
11-year run on TBS. His travel specials, Conan Without Borders, will continue to air on TBS going forward. In addition, O'Brien has signed a deal with HBO Max for a new weekly variety series, though no premiere date has been set for that series. Why would that be? Why would it be set?
Yeah.
It's like several months anyway. Right. With the announcement, Full Frontal with Samantha Bee will be the sole late night show on TBS, renewed for a 5th season last year. I like Conan's statement. I don't know if you read it or not.
I didn't. I didn't read it.
Here's his quote. In 1993, Johnny Carson gave me the best advice of my career. As soon as possible, get on a streaming platform. I'm thrilled that I get to continue doing whatever the hell it is I do on HBO Max, and I look forward to a free subscription. This says, O'Brien famously came to TBS in 2010 from NBC. There he had hosted Late Night with Conan O'Brien for over 15 years before he was tapped to take over The Tonight Show from Jay Leno. However, after NBC attempted to move the primetime series, The Jay Leno Show, to late night and push back The Tonight Show to the 12:05 a.m. time slot, O'Brien quit the show rather than, quote, participate in what I honestly believe is its destruction. Anyway, so pretty much TBS is like, hey, it's a great run, looking forward to, whatever else and blah, blah, blah. So it seems amicable. It just seems, and again, like Conan, this article doesn't really mention that, but they made the decision, 1 or 2 years ago to change the entire format.
Yeah.
To go from hour long to half hour.
To half hour.
And what did he say at the time? It just needed, the hour long format was becoming exhaustive, and he thought that it was pretty much, he'd say, we've done enough experimenting with guest centered and comedy centered content that where we don't have to fit a 1 hour construct anymore.
Yeah.
And also maybe it'll help our ratings. I don't know. What was the story with that?
So Conan's always been like this guy that likes to push the envelope, and not just in his comedy, but just in the way he delivers things. And so you have, if you want to just jump into Conan, right, on TBS, it started fairly straightforward. It's like all the other late night shows. And then suddenly, like, Conan decides he's going to do the podcast, and he's going to embrace this half hour format that's more casual, where he doesn't have to wear a suit and tie every night. And
wear a leather jacket.
Yeah, a leather jacket and like a checkered shirt and blue jeans. And that's great. Like that's him being Conan. And he's always been the king of those remotes where he goes on location in different places with different people, and he's just always been sort of a pioneer in how can I get out of the studio, how can I break the format a little bit, and I super respect that about him. He's probably still my favorite late night talk show host, and so this doesn't really strike me as being surprising, considering he's done these like Conan on the road things for the last little bit, where he'll go to a specific place like Japan, and he does like a week in Japan, and he'll do a week over here, and he just does like all of these little things and sort of releases them as like a 1 week kind of mini travel log. And he's always been that guy that's trying to do something new and fresh and cool. And so this does not surprise me at all. And I think, in fact, if it frees him up, I think this is the move, because Conan, I think, thrives when he doesn't have as many limitations. And that's not to say that he also can't perform when there are limitations. But, if you think about like that brief time between the NBC era and the TBS era, he goes on like he takes it does a tour of this like one man show kind of a thing that's really not a one man show. It's like this is me and all my friends doing what we're supposed to be doing. Just
Right.
NBC won't let us, and it was phenomenal. I don't know if there's a
It's called
documentary.
Conan O'Brien Can't Stop, right?
Conan O'Brien Can't Stop. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
And the show looked like so much fun, and
Yeah.
it's just him doing all kinds of goofy things, and that's what this sounds
That's when he
like.
grew his
And so,
beard out and like,
yeah,
yeah.
it's like peak era Conan,
Yeah, it
and
was peak crazy. Like he was so unpredictable. I was like, what's he gonna do?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm all for this. I think that's cool, and obviously, I'm a HBO Max shill already, so I'm on board.
Well, and this is part of those things that will get people subscribing to stuff like that.
Yeah,
There's versions of this, like I mean, John Oliver's show I guess it's on HBO Max. I mean, like it's that's a
yeah,
reason to for people to subscribe.
sure.
That's a strong show,
Yeah.
and there was even I think it got canceled, but for a while there was the Joel McHale show on Netflix.
Yes. Yeah.
Did that get canceled? I've not seen that anywhere.
I haven't seen it in a while. Yeah.
Woo, that's bad. It's not good
And
news.
then David Letterman's on Netflix
That's
now.
true. But I don't
Yeah.
see that's I feel like this is the biggest get so far. I love Joel McHale.
Yeah.
I've never I'm too young to be is it I hope it's understandable to anybody listening. I'm 31 years old. I have zero attachment to Dave Letterman.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It just doesn't it makes I think Conan and probably like Jimmy Kimmel is like our generation's late night people. Would you say? Who would you say
I
that
would agree.
is?
My dad loves David Letterman, right? Like
Right.
that was his guy. And
Jeez, I don't know if
so
my dad loves any of them.
and Conan is mine,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
Conan, like I remember my dad talking about David Letterman being a genius,
yeah.
and Conan
Kimmel's
is
a little older than us too. He was a little bit before our time, or after. Well,
he
okay,
started after Conan.
he did, but like
So he's probably closer
he
to
hit big when like Lost was getting started, like when ABC was really
yes.
surging as like a strong provider of like premium primetime content.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
My thing with Kimmel, and I mean this is purely opinion.
yeah,
My thing with Kimmel is I don't find him as I don't find like I love Conan's energy and I love the wackiness of it,
mm-hmm.
and I feel like Kimmel's always been in the safe zone and
Mm.
does his interviews and he's a great host in that way,
Yeah.
but I don't remember like his little games that he plays or like remotes. I don't remember any remotes. Like nothing sticks with me. But Conan, there's like so much content in my brain, like forever. Whether it's Mr. T going apple picking or like Conan with Jordan Schlansky on any trip ever. Like all of these
Yeah.
moments are just stuck in my brain. And that's pure Conan. It's great when they send him out to like the American Girl store, right? Like it's totally something that he can't do or relate to.
Right.
But like here comes this like towering haired man into the American Girl doll store,
I think
and
that's like inherently one of the things that's cool about sending Conan to like French Guyana or some
right,
weird country. Like he's just this super noticeable, like six
yes,
foot five, redheaded.
yes, sore thumb of a man.
He's a human sore thumb.
He is, and yeah, man. But that's that. Like, so in my head, like Conan is my guy, and
Yeah.
plus, like I have the podcast to listen to, and all of
Right.
this, incredible comedy that he's done. That I don't know. It speaks to me. I guess my sensibilities are more wacky, and I'm not going to say like Jimmy Kimmel plays it safe necessarily, but I will say he's more of a traditional, like I'm going to interview you and I'll find the comedy in the interview, as opposed to like I am my own brand of comedy. And Conan, like you can very clearly spell out like his comedy is, this self depreciating, like
Yeah.
wacky, whatever. And I can't say the same thing about Kimmel, although I also haven't seen a lot of Kimmel. I've seen
Yeah.
a fair amount, but not a lot.
Boy, we could do an entire episode like sort of comparing and contrasting the current late night
Yeah.
hosts, which of
Yeah.
them I can even remember, you know. I mean,
Right.
there's too many. There's Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, James Corden,
Yeah.
Seth Meyers, Samantha Bee,
Yeah.
a couple other people I don't know, you know,
Yeah.
and then like you know, people who have like internet shows, and then like other people, like new people. I don't know, it's crazy, but like
Hey, before we jump out of this subject, I'll
yeah,
probably review this eventually. But I started watching the Animaniacs reboot on Hulu,
yeah.
and there's an episode where Pinky and the Brain are trying to take over the world, obviously, and they decide like Brain needs to go on the Seth Meyers show, and they specifically say I've got to go on like I'm going to go on Seth Meyers, and they like animated Seth Meyers and everything. And I don't think he actually provides the voice. I think it's somebody doing an impression, but like he's holding
I wonder if
a
it's
coffee
Josh
mug.
Myers.
I don't probably he's holding like this mug that says smug, and like the whole thing is so like smarmy and gross, and it's just hilarious that they're making fun of this guy on Pinky and the Brain.
He's like, I can't believe they took the time to animate jokes at my expense.
Right, exactly.
That's what would be the most insulting to me. Like, not only am I the subject of ridicule, like it took,
Somebody animated this for
yeah,
8 months.
this went through almost a year of revisions. Like, oh, while they're making fun of his appearance, we really need these shadows to match with the light.
Right, exactly.
You had multiple opportunities to not do this to
Yes.
me. You
Yep,
chose to keep
exactly.
going.
Exactly. And call me by name.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Who owns Seth Meyers? I'm trying to think. Seth Meyers on CBS, isn't he? I guess
I don't even
I guess you don't
know.
have to work for the same company as the person you're making fun of, do you?
No, but it does help in terms of licensing if you need that sort of thing.
Oh
But
well.
I guess if it's parody, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That opens up a lot of possibilities for
Yeah,
me
it does.
somehow
Right. Sure.
down the road.
Right.
Um okay, I gotta ask you. All right, I wonder if there's a way we can briefly address this gigantic subject. Let's start with the headline. Did you hear about this? Universal and Cinemark strike historic deals, shrinking the theatrical window for event pictures to 31 days.
Hmm.
So there's a whole link in the show notes in the show notes from the Hollywood Reporter about this, and then there's this website that has a kind of a breakdown of what it really means. That website is
Hmm.
My Darling IndieWire. um, is this Zach Sharf? No, it's Tom Brueggemann. Two
Bergman.
G's, two N's.
You,
Brueggemann.
you
Brueggemann.
you almost said that like it was a late night show. Bergman.
Tom
Tom
Brueggemann.
Bergman.
Bruce Nash. So the headline is this on IndieWire. It's very pretty much tells you where they stand on it. Universal's Cinemark deal is exhibition's future. Studios set rules, theaters follow. And it's just to quickly summarize what the deal actually was. Well, there goes the Wi-Fi again, so maybe not. Pretty much like everything else in the pandemic, we've got an existing problem that was headed this way, and just got there faster. And this is sort of another thing that's happening to the theater exhibitors, shortening the theatrical window from, God, it used to be like 70 something. I mean, it used to be, obviously, when we talk about used to be, it depends on what year you're talking about. I mean, it used to be super long. It used to be like a year or something crazy, but like
Yeah.
now it's like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And there was this pressure from the studios to be able to get them out of exhibition so that they could get them onto rental and home distribution faster, because DVDs is where they make their money. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
once we get through that surge, it's costing us money in like week 10 to keep
Yeah.
exhibiting the film, and we're making like $6,000 a weekend. So
Yeah.
this is silly.
What's the point?
How can we, there's a big juicy front end where we're making money, and then it's like this horrible end where we're just spending more than we're making to keep it in theaters.
Hmm.
and we could be putting it on Blu-ray and selling it and making money. And then in like the mid 2000s or the 2010, I guess we'll call it, when like digital media or sorry, physical media ceased to like be worth anything
Yeah.
when streaming started, that collapsed. That changed the way films were made. Everything. That's a whole big domino effect. You can read about it in lots of other places. But so one of the things that did was it shrank the theatrical window even more. Instead
Yeah.
of get these films out of theaters so we can sell them to
Yeah.
home markets, it was we
Mhm.
need to be able to license them out to streaming services and make money that way. And then it became we need to be able to we need the freedom to put them on our own streaming services that we've created. If we're Disney or we're Warner Brothers,
Right.
and now it's hey, we can put these on our streaming services whenever we want, but
Yeah.
we'd love to not split people's attention.
Yes. Yeah.
So this deal, again, this isn't loading, so whatever, but it pretty much was a deal between Universal Studios and Cinemark's theaters
Yep.
to shorten that to 31 days. And it's even shorter depending on the gross.
Right.
Pretty
So I
much,
bel
yeah, do you
yeah,
know
I
the.
believe the number is like 50 million. If it reaches 50 million within its first weekend, I think, then it's free to. It may not be the first weekend. Anyway, there's a $50 million mark that it has to hit, and then within 31 days they can release it for streaming wherever.
Let me see. Here's the let's see with AMC. Universal negotiated the option to place releases on PVOD after the third weekend of release. Now Universal has a deal with Cinemark that adds a new wrinkle. The PVOD option extends to 5 weeks if the film opens to more than $50 million.
Yeah.
Technically, it's not set in stone. The 2 extra weeks are a Cinemark victory, but in 2019, only 16 films cleared that $50 million bar. There were 13 other films that made over $100 million, but opened to less than $50 million, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Knives Out, Hustlers, 1917. The 90-day window for standard price VOD and hard copy ownership and rentals remains. So it goes on to say, we don't know when or if theaters will provide that level of gross again. Studios can easily reduce opening gross by limiting the number of theaters that open a film or limiting the number of screens they play in each theater. They could shift marketing to other platforms, which might reduce initial interest and bolster later revenues. It says, for instance, studios see an 80% return from PVOD and between 55 and 60% for theatrical, whatever the strategy is in the studio's hands. So it's an interesting just sort of development, like more pieces of news that solidify
Yep.
this new relationship between studios and exhibitors. And it's for if you thought that maybe the theaters were going to find a way to get the upper hand,
Yep.
this was like a giant punch in the junk.
Right. But see, so this is exactly what you and I have mentioned before, which is when we when a studio releases a film on streaming, like let's say, for instance, Warner Brothers announced they're doing this for Wonder Woman 1984,
Mm-hmm.
released Christmas Day this year. Same with Disney Pixar's Soul, right? That's going to Disney Plus on the same day.
Right. For free.
So for free. Same with Wonder Woman. It's for free. And
Wow.
so when they do this, the question is, how do they make money?
Mm-hmm.
The only way that they would conceivably make money is if new subscribers log on for the first time because of that film.
Right.
But the numerical data behind that, I haven't seen. I don't know how often that happens, and really if that's even profitable at all, because you would assume that most people who are going to be wanting to see Soul already have Disney Plus. So there's no reason for them to spend any money,
Right.
right? So
Right.
releasing it for free makes no sense.
No.
That's sort of the reason why Mulan, as frustrating as it was, at least made financial sense,
Right. Yeah.
right? For them. It's weird, but this makes sense, right? That the theater or that the studios would understand, or at least begin to understand now, that the theater system actually is important because that is where they're going to make the most money,
Yeah.
and especially their opening weekends. Like those things have been incredibly lucrative for the MCU, for these big superhero films, and for movies like Soul. Even opening weekend is big, and so for them to be able to strike some deal, Universal here, where they are able to still have that opening weekend in theaters and then shift to another model, makes complete and total sense to me, because for them, they're getting the best of both worlds. They are now able to um, essentially get exactly what they've always gotten out of theaters, although right now things are limited, but presumably in a year or two we're back at full swing and everything's great and dandy, and these movies are opening as big as they once were,
Yeah.
and so they're getting you know that great huge money injection at that point. But then they're also getting the option to 1 month later have it on video on demand. And this could be, I'm not sure how it breaks down, if they're considering video on demand PVOD or just like a streaming thing, or if there is any delineation between it. But the point is, for them to be able to diversify the way that film sees people, that is super smart. And actually, even though this doesn't actually benefit the theaters, in a way it does, because in
Right.
a way, exhibitors now understand that the studios have at least somewhat acknowledged that the theatrical window is important in some way,
Yeah.
and that at least, even if eventually it shrinks to like, we're going to release Wonder Woman 3 for 1 week only in
Right.
theaters, and then it goes straight to streaming after
Right.
that. Like, if that's the way that this goes, then the theater owners still get the satisfaction of knowing, like, you can't get rid of us. Like,
Right.
you have to have us.
They've
You've acknowledged.
validated them. They may have
Yeah.
they've sort of said like it's a weird like backhanded compliment. Like you are essential to our business model,
Yeah.
even if it's only for 2 or 3 weeks. It's still like you're more useful to us in concentrated doses because
Yeah.
you can pull in more money. Like my reaction to this is still overall good for the consumer because it is, which is the biggest thing. It's like I'm worried about how it affects the studios only in as much as I want them to make money doing this because I don't want them to raise their prices because I don't like that. And I want the business model to work so that they don't have to do something I hate to make themselves whole.
Yeah.
As a
And options are
consumer,
good for the
options are
consumer.
good.
Options are good. And
Exactly.
so if I can go to the theaters, great. If
Yeah.
if I'm gonna wait, great. Like, I can do either
Yeah.
way.
This to me, this to me is I don't want to speak too soon, but to me, this is the ideal situation. Like with
Yeah.
movies, like okay, whatever. It's May 2024, and I keep using Secret Wars as like the hypothetical big event movie that's
Sure.
for Marvel. Okay, so Secret Wars is coming out. All right, so Secret Wars is going to be in wide release on May 3rd, 2023, and or you can watch it on Disney Plus. For a premium, for a
Yeah.
premium
For 30
fee,
bucks. Yeah.
on June 1st or June
Yep.
3rd, okay,
Yeah.
and then you can
Yeah.
see it for free in July 3rd on Disney Plus.
Yep.
So people who really can't afford to go to theaters, at least they can
Yeah.
see the film in July rather than August or
Yeah.
September after
Right.
purchasing it or
Right.
renting it.
Right.
People who have Disney Plus and they want to pay the premium, okay, cool. So they might still save money or they can't get their kids, whatever. Okay, they still get to see it for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
People like me who cannot wait to see the film and will not wait to see the film will pay
Yeah.
money for a ticket to go
Yep.
to a theater
And see
and
it.
see it immediately.
Yep.
Or I don't have to see it right away, but I want to enjoy it with an audience. I'm
Yeah.
going to the theater for that. It's the
Yep.
same thing as a football game. Do you want to see the
Yeah.
football game with a crowd or do you want to watch it on TV? Fine.
Right.
If you don't care about going, watch it
Yeah.
on television and have
Right.
some ads shot at your eyeballs, and they'll make money
Right.
from you that way.
Right.
You can avoid the ads, pay $97,000 for a ticket,
Right.
and go
Right.
to the football game, but you might have more fun, and it's your thing.
Yeah.
So to me, this is great because it creates a sense of urgency. Like
Yeah.
if you want to see some theaters, then plan it. Then you've got
Yeah.
4 weeks to do it. Pick a
Yeah.
weekend and come
Yeah.
out here and see us because we're going to try and shove all you guys into this first 3 or 4 weeks here,
Yep.
and then the movie's gonna be gone. And if it matters to you to see this in theaters, get your ass out here and see it in theaters. If it doesn't,
Yeah.
stay your ass home, and maybe it won't make any money, and it'll come to you
Yeah.
sooner.
Right. And what is it per month for Disney Plus? Like
Seven dollars,
$7, $8?
yeah.
Okay. So $7, like I could see it breaking down this way. Okay, go to the theaters, spend your $15 per person to see Secret Wars.
Yeah.
Then a month later, you can pay a premium of $30 on Disney Plus, just like Mulan, to be able to watch Secret Wars. Great. Then a month later, it's free. It's on Disney Plus. But for those people who do not yet have Disney Plus, if they put it behind like a trial blocker, right? So like I can't sign up for a 7-day trial and watch it for free,
Right.
but rather like if I pay that $7 for that first month, then I have access to it. And so then all of a sudden, and then maybe another 3 months later, then they take it out from behind that trial paywall, right? So then all of a sudden, like there's essentially 4 options to the consumer based on how important it is to you to see it.
Yeah.
It's super important. I'm going to pay the $15 per person
Right.
to go see it, right? So for a family of 4, yeah, I'm going to be paying that $60,
Yeah.
right? But or I'll wait a month and pay 30 for the family of 4, or I'll wait a month and pay another month and pay $7, or I'll wait another 3 and not pay at all. And all along that spectrum, Disney makes money. And then you even consider that one behind the paywall or outside of the trial paywall where like I didn't pay anything and I got to see Secret Wars. I just saw it 5 months after everybody else. Those people, well, guess what? They forget to cancel that subscription and Disney gets their money anyway. Right. And so like that will happen. And so Disney's making money, from this one film for months and months and months.
Right.
As opposed to the model right now, which is it's in theaters for however long it plays, 2 months, being about the tops, I guess. And then and it plays and then it's just gone. It's like nowhere for a little while. And Disney's just sitting on it, and then it's released on Blu-ray, and then it's on Disney Plus, and blah blah blah. And so, but they're not really making money on it much at that point. And so the great thing is with that current idea that you and I just laid out, with month by month by month.
Yeah.
At some point, that is released on Blu-ray too, and the people who saw it in theaters in that first, that opening weekend, like 3 months later, well, those people are probably going to buy it on Blu-ray too.
Right.
And so you get that money doubled up.
Right.
And so anyway, it's great.
Yeah. It just creates...
Or it's doubled up anyway, because I paid opening weekend and I saw it. And then a month later, I want to see it again. I'm going to do that from home though. So I'm going to pay that $30 premium. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like especially a lot of these things, like you'll sample multiple experiences. You want to see it immediately.
Yeah.
So I think I probably talked about this in one of the solo episodes. I did is you want to see it immediately, and then you'll give it a second watch from the comfort of your own home, depending on if it's still a premium price or it's free at that point for you. There's more ways to see the movie in more ways that you are most comfortable seeing it, and each of them costs something. It's a cost benefit,
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's overall a good thing. It's being couched as a bad thing to an extent. But I think that it's reassuring, if anything, of the business model, and gives the consumer more choice, which is the goal.
Yep.
Okay, cool. That didn't take long. Well, we're going to go to break. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about The Invisible Man, and we're also going to talk about something else that Dustin wants to talk about.
Yeah.
It's a mystery.
It's a mystery.
You can solve it if you know, if you read the show notes. I'll be right back on the HooperCast Movie Hour. HooperCast Movie Hour.
Yeah.
It's a good time for me to talk to you guys about Patreon. It's for some people, this is like a, oh no, it's like when Mormons show up to your door, like want to talk to you about Jesus.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay. So
right. I gotta go.
Here's me and Dustin riding up on our little bikes with our little ties, with our pairs of shorts, and we're like, we'd like to talk to you about the good Lord Patreon. So you can go to our page, patreon.com/HooperCast, and we got some simple stuff. But so it's mainly just us asking you if you want to support the show. That's the way to do it. So you can listen to the show ad free. You can get the show sooner than the people who don't, and that'd be really cool. It's $3 per month. That's less than $1 a show. We think that's pretty easy for anyone who wants to toss some shekels into our top hats.
Yes.
Or our satchels, whatever LDS people carry.
Sure.
So I wanted to say that right. That's it. So patreon.com/HooperCast. That's $3 a month, 4 episodes a month.
Yeah.
Less than $1. Less than $1.
Less than $1.
That's the business there. Twitter handle at Connor_Dempsey, at HooperCast, and HooperCast on Instagram and on Facebook as well. All right, Dustin, let's get into the movie we both saw recently. I watched this over the weekend. It is, of course, the 2020 film. This is one of the movies that sort of pioneered releasing a film during the pandemic, and quite successfully, I believe. The film is Leigh Wannell's The Invisible Man. So, written and directed by Leigh Wannell, right? Fully written by him. I don't think anyone else did a pass on the script. I think it was his
it was his
thing.
His baby.
Yeah. So obviously a remake of the or a reimagining of the popular Universal property, The Invisible Man, and this was, I guess, originally part of the Dark Universe before they scrapped that. I remember a time where Johnny Depp was going to be the Invisible Man, which, considering everything going on with Fantastic Beasts, would have not been. He would have wanted to be the Invisible Man for real.
I know, right? Get me out of here!
Just unwrap that tape and just drop the trench coat and disappear.
Right.
So yeah, this came out earlier in the year, and it was bouncing everywhere from. I think it was premium video on demand fully, and I remember. Yeah. It was like $20. You want to rent the movie? It was $20, and I almost did it because I was hearing good things.
Yeah.
Yes, screenplay by Leigh Wannell, directed by him. Universal Pictures, Blumhouse Productions. So it's Blumhouse, and And this is good Blumhouse, starring Elizabeth Moss. We've got Oliver. Oh, I can't see his whole name. Oliver Jackson Cohen. Is he the guy from The Haunting of Hill House? Yes, yes.
You would know that.
In The Haunting of Bly Manor.
Gotcha.
Aldous Hodge, Storm Reed is in here. Is she the one from Wrinkle in Time?
Yes,
okay.
She is.
Yes, I knew she looked familiar. Harriet Dyer, Michael Dorman, if these names are ringing a bell. Anyways, obviously the main draw here is Elizabeth Moss, who you would know from The Handmaid's Tale and Mad Men, and lots of things you've seen.
Lots of things.
Yeah, she's a very distinct actress and a very talented one. And I believe she also produced the film. That might have been. I don't know. I think I don't know that for sure. So the movie is about it's about a woman who escapes an abusive relationship with a really wealthy tech giant, basically, named Adrian something, and Adrian Griffin. I don't know why I'm telling you his name, but the point is she's in an abusive relationship. The first scene is her escaping his compound, his big cliffside mansion.
Yep.
And soon into the first act, we learn that Adrian is supposedly taken his own life. He is obsessed with her. She fled the relationship, and he couldn't cope, and he took his own life.
Yep.
And he left her a bunch of money because he's weird, and so she's kind of trying to get back on her feet, find a job. It's unclear how long she's been with him, months, I guess. And she's just finding a job, trying to find a place to live, moving on with her life after being, physically and emotionally abused by this
Yep.
person.
Yep.
And then stuff starts happening, and then pretty soon she figures out that he might not be dead, and she is being tortured by an invisible presence that she believes is Adrian, whose field of technology is optics,
Mm-hmm.
and she said he's figured out a way to make himself invisible, and nobody believes her. So the
Yep.
film is a very, not really that subtle of an allegory of
Yeah.
sexual abuse and
Yeah.
how victims can, for a long time, go unnoticed because it is their word against other people's. And so it's a
Mm-hmm.
very real metaphor of, we literally can't see what's happening to you, and no one believes her.
Yeah.
And I think I give the movie 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Lee Wannell's last movie was Upgrade, and I think
Mm-hmm.
me and Kellen may have talked about this on the show.
Yeah. I still haven't seen it.
Man, Upgrade is good. If you loved like the those camera shifts in this movie,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Upgrade is like all of that.
Okay. Cool.
It's really cool, and the
Yeah.
sound
Yeah.
design, like that woof, like those weird like warp
Mm-hmm.
noises, that's
Yep.
all over Upgrade.
Sweet.
I'm loving the work of Lee Wannell,
Mm-hmm.
and this movie was no different. It was impressive on a technical level, like how you tackle, you know, scenes where an invisible person is grabbing you and dragging you, and
Yeah.
how they
How do
achieved
you visualize that?
how they achieved those effects, and the direction is really strong. The way that you build tension, a lot of times they're just panning over. Like, it's kind of like in Paranormal Activity would do some of this too. Like you pan over to like a corner for no reason,
Yeah.
and as the
Well, that's
viewer,
my
you're
favorite thing about the
you're
movie.
just like, oh Jesus, what is that him, or is that just a
That,
chair?
right. That's totally my favorite thing about this movie, which is that it uses the cinematic language, like the entirety of cinematic language, to build tension. So, for
Oh,
instance,
the
you just mentioned it,
sound.
like you have if you have Elizabeth Moss getting dressed, this is opening scene, she's leaving the compound,
Hmm.
right, or whatever, and she's getting dressed and blah blah blah, and the camera like pans over to a hallway
Yeah, an empty
and
hallway.
and you keep waiting, you're the audience,
Yeah,
you keep waiting for someone to come out of a doorway or walk down the hallway,
yeah.
and nothing happens,
Hmm.
and then the camera just slowly pans back to Elizabeth Moss. Like, we as the audience, we know what we should be seeing,
Hmm.
because there's no reason to pan to nothing,
Right.
right? So we know what should be there, and it's our brains that fill in the gaps,
Yeah.
so that when we walk when the camera pans back, our brains almost fill in this, like, oh, he's walking right there,
Right.
right? And whether he is or he isn't doesn't matter. The point
Yeah.
is that our brains
You know
are
you're watching a
now.
film called The Invisible Man. You know who's the antagonist. Is he already invisible?
Yes.
When the camera pans away to her, has he just entered the hallway, like just out of my
Right.
periphery? Is it going to pan
Exactly.
back and he's like right there? Is
Yes,
he going to
exactly.
leap out of the shadows and murder her? What's happening?
And it builds tension with that.
Yeah.
You mentioned the audio design, so if we're talking about just the sound design is so perfectly
Amazing.
utilized, so that every now and then you might hear a footstep or you might hear
Oh,
something happening, and again, we can't see it but we can hear it.
yep.
And so this reminds me of a lot of like the Jaws level of filmmaking, which
Yeah.
is like, we see the water
Yep.
and we know why we're looking at it,
Right.
but we don't see the thing. We do not see the shark. It's
Hmm.
just whatever's there to scare us. Maybe we don't even see it. We just see the open water. And that's beautiful, because it is actively engaging the audience and asking us to imagine with the filmmaker what is happening.
Yeah.
And so it's not one of those films where you just sit back and it happens to you. It's a film where you are also participating. And what's great about it is we kind of know more information than all the other characters in the film, other than Elizabeth Moss. So when she says, believe me, believe me, believe me, and no one believes her, we're frustrated too. Like, we're an active participant in this.
Yeah.
And so the position that Lee Wannell puts the audience in is what makes this work.
Yeah. You put we tell the story of the Invisible Man from the point of view of his victim.
Yeah.
It's not about how he became invisible, what he's,
Yeah.
and again, it's a very tech-based approach. Like, how would one become invisible?
Right.
And Lee Wannell like went and talked to like, it's like usually it starts with like some sort of military application, and he did a lot of research. He's like pretty much like the current where we are with wanting to achieve this is you do it with cameras and reflective, display scales and stuff like that, which is pretty much what the suit's designed around. And so like when you make that person like an obsessive, abusive, powerful presence who's created this horrible, the perfect technology with which to stalk and abuse women, it's the perfect like real life horror movie. It's one of those things. It's like he's not like some weird demon creature that like doesn't exist in real life. Like it's just a human being who has like a horrible Deus ex machina piece of tech perfectly suited to sexual assault and terror. And this this doesn't happen in real life. The only part of this that doesn't happen in real life is the invisible suit part.
Yeah, right.
The rest of this totally happens.
Absolutely.
And so that's what's truly scary about it for, especially if you've been the victim of abuse and you're watching this and you're like, welp, this is pretty much how I felt for years until I finally found a lawyer who would listen to me, or for most of them probably, I never got closure because my abuser is still out there and no one ever believed me, and I just had to move on with my life and what's left of it. And so this movie is going to be incredibly cathartic for those people because there is resolution in this film. It is not a super happy ending, but it is an empowering one to an extent. And for the rest of us, I suppose it's just a really cool sci-fi story that's really, really grounded in believable characterization, believable plot elements. I mean, again, if you can accept the suit being invisible, the rest of it's just... okay, like, did the police behave normally? Like stuff like that.
Right,
like,
logic stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Which it held up for me.
Me too.
Right about the midpoint of the movie, I'm thinking about the structure now of all this stuff. Right about the midpoint, right past the 1 hour mark, I was like, okay, here's these things in place. We're a little too on top of things, and then something horrible happens. That puts the character in a way worse spot. And I was like,
correct.
Okay. That completely makes sense,
Exactly.
And all of these moments, again, you don't have the movie that we saw without the performance of Elizabeth Moss, who just is a killer in every role that she performs, but she is full 100% in this movie. She's great. And a lot of times she is obviously acting to nothing. And it's fantastic.
What's great is like this is not schlocky Blumhouse, so I don't know like with our listeners, like do people have good connotations of Blumhouse or not?
We don't know.
Just varies, but this is like one of the good ones. This is the one where the actors try and the script is good.
This isn't like campy horror like
good ideas, great metaphors, also like some decent visual effects. There's a couple times where it's in, but for the most part, like it's great.
Yeah.
So
I don't have much else to say, honestly. Like I
don't either. It's a good movie. 4 stars.
I recommend people see it. You can rent it. I got it at the library, and other than it was weird for me. I had like a 4D experience because like I'm watching the movie and like. The first scene, is like her, and it's just a bunch of foot creaks and like the quiet house noises. Is someone awake or whatever? And like, it took me like 20 minutes to watch that first scene because my kids kept leaving their bedrooms. So I'd hear like a foot creak and be like, damn, that sounds really, that's my upstairs.
That's actual me.
That's my floor. I could go upstairs and I'm going back down the stairs and looking up there, like in the hallway's empty. It was the same thing. I was just like, oh, Jesus, it's so weird.
Right.
And then I like for real like stepped on a loud toy. I was like,
oh
no. Go watch The Invisible Man. It's great.
Free on HBO Max.
I'm so Like, I went to the library. And you're like,
Wow,
HBO
wow.
Max.
Yep. I sat at home, went nowhere.
It's Pat. All right, the next movie, the final movie of the night, we're gonna show
Yeah, TV series.
TV series. All right, Dustin, what we got?
We have Alex Rider. So Alex Ryder is a an Amazon series, although I think for whatever reason it's billed as an IMDb TV series.
The advertiser, the advertisement I saw was IMDb TV.
I don't understand what that means. All I know is that there are ads during this. Like there's act breaks and like there's ads.
Yeah.
But the act breaks seem to be like artificial. It's not like they wrote them with ad breaks in mind. Because I think this plays as just Amazon Prime overseas. And like internationally, it's just Amazon, and here it's IMDb TV. I don't know. Anyway,
Contracts.
yeah, whatever. So the point is, Alex Rider. I would be surprised if very many of our listeners actually know what this is, but Alex Rider is a book series written, I think, starting in like the year 2000 by a British author named Anthony Horowitz. I actually was introduced to this book series when I was in middle school, so sixth grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it was like a book fair or something. And I saw this, and all that grabbed me was 14-year-old becomes spy. And I'm like, oh, cool. I will buy this with my Scholastic money.
This is around about the same time I was denied reading Harry Potter and fell off of reading and happiness in general. So,
right, sure.
So I'm glad you had this the same time
Yes.
I was suffering further south. Like,
I would have recommended it to you. I really think that at the right age, you would have loved it. And I think that if at some point you're looking for something for your sons to read when they are of age, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
So I read I read the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books in this series. So the last one that I read came out when I was a senior in high school. There have since been another 5 released. I have no knowledge of these.
From
but
the
I've
same
read the
author
first
or
from the
other...
same author.
Oh,
Yep,
I was gonna say
author.
sometimes it's like,
yeah, like
there are still
he turns it
people
over.
writing like Tom Clancy books, even though Tom Clancy's like dead. Is he?
Right.
Oh wow, is he dead? Did I just kill
He
him?
is dead.
Okay.
Yep. You did not kill him.
Okay.
So
I kept him dead though.
Right, exactly. You just confirmed it. So Alex Rider, again, it's about a young boy who becomes a spy. This adapts the second book. The first book was adapted previously as a film, which was a failure. And so I guess rather than readapt that book again, they decided to just kind of merge some of the elements of the first book with the second book and then adapt the second book. And so here's the thing.
It's kind of like what they're going to be doing with the Suicide Squad, probably.
Suicide Squad.
It's the same thing. We'll keep some of this, but we're going to ignore the first one.
Yeah, exactly. And so they, this. Let me start here. My history with this again is I read it as a kid, but I'm a huge fan of it. Weirdly, so when I was a freshman in high school, this was the first and I think still only feature film screenplay I ever wrote was an adaptation of the first book. It's the first thing I ever wrote as a feature.
Whoa.
I do not have it anymore. I have looked. I do not know where that save file exists.
It was stolen and made into this film.
It was.
This show.
But that's the first thing that I ever wrote was as a feature was an adaptation of the first book. So I'm a little bit more like into this than probably the average viewer, which is why ultimately I'm going to give this 2 stars. It's sort of a frustrating watch. I don't hate it. In fact, I like a lot about it, but it never connected for me. And mostly it's because they focus a lot on what happens to Alex Rider, but not a lot of what does Alex Rider think and feel about it. And I think the books do a better job at this. You're able to get inside the mind of a character with, a prose narrative that you can't necessarily do in a screenplay, short of, having him externalize his thoughts and feelings to another character or even just voiceover narration. And so I feel like I was a little disconnected from Alex as a character, maybe because I'm older now, maybe because I'm not 12, but it could also be just because they didn't do a fine, like a good enough job of explaining what Alex is thinking and feeling. Um, they really wanted to explore some of the other characters around Alex, and I understand that for a TV show you want to have supporting characters and you want to have all that, and that's all great. But when it comes at the expense of the main character and his depth and his journey, then I think you've kind of failed. Just 101, you've just kind of failed. So this show is created by and every episode written by a guy named Guy Burt, and it's produced by Anthony Horowitz, the actual author that wrote these
Wow.
books. And so you would expect that Anthony
Yeah.
Horowitz would have this mentality of like preserving the thought of like, who is Alex? What does he think? What does he feel? Let me get inside his head. And it just doesn't feel like they ever were there. And I'm not going to blame the actor, right? Because
Right.
Otto Farrant plays Alex. He does a great job. But he's just not given enough to do. And so I think this could have been a really good first season. And honestly, the first half of this season, it's 8 episodes. The first 4 episodes are frustrating, and the second 4 are better. Like it found its footing maybe a little bit when you finally get into like, okay, we're not training him anymore. Now he's in the field, but but I wouldn't expect that like the show now has finally found its footing, because it's not like it finally decided to give us Alex's heart and soul. It just gave us what's happening to him and what was happening to him was more interesting in the second half.
Right.
So I don't think the show has found itself yet, and I don't think that the creator here, Guy Burt, I don't think that he's quite understood what makes Alex Alex and what makes him special. And I think also, if you take away the fact that I've read these books and that I'm surprised by how much of them I remember, I'm
Right.
also surprised by how much I forgot. But I remembered quite a lot about them. And what's strange to me is I think if you take away my knowledge of it, they don't do an adequate job of explaining what needs to be explained. So there's this whole idea that Alex becomes a spy because his uncle is a spy and is killed in the field, and Alex kind of figures it out that he's a spy and is then recruited by the MI6 to finish out a mission that his uncle was working on. Right? It makes sense. It's logical or whatever. Whatever. Within the story, it is. And there's these things that Alex can do that feels weird and like, oh, a 14-year-old boy shouldn't be able to do that. But the reason is his uncle had been training him his entire life, unbeknownst to him, right? So like how to withstand interrogation. He's 14, but he's like a professional scuba diver, and he can like base jump and like all of these things because his uncle made sure that, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know.
Hmm.
And Alex just thought he was having fun.
Right.
Right. And now all of these lessons his uncle have taught him, that they're flooding back when he's in the field. That never happens in this film. They mention like he's been trained for this his whole life, but we don't see that, and we don't feel the ramifications of it, and we don't feel enough of Alex saying like, "Whoa, my uncle like taught me this."
Right.
Like, what is that like that happens to you as a 14-year-old boy to realize that your uncle, who just passed away, had left you this gift?
Yeah.
That's an emotional moment, and it never happens. And so all that said, I really love this story and I really love the world of it, but it hasn't found its footing. And even though the story, like the actual what happens, is interesting, it never really quite finds its lead character. And for a show called Alex Ryder, I've got to know who Alex Ryder is,
Yeah.
and I don't. So for that reason, I would not necessarily recommend this to people who are just like, I'm interested in this. I would say read the books if you're that interested.
Mm.
But what I would also say is like, I'm gonna watch this next season. They're producing another season. I'm gonna watch it. Hopefully somebody says we've got to know more about Alex, and we'll fix that problem, and then maybe I can recommend it. But as it is right now, I can't recommend it. I would say read the books if you're interested, because this doesn't do a good enough job of bringing them to life. In the final episode, Alex's friend Tom wears a T-shirt, and the T-shirt reads, "The book is always better." And in this case, you're darn right it is. So I guess it was supposed to be ironic, but it just was another reminder of like, I didn't enjoy this as much as I should have. Yeah, Alex Ryder. Again, I'm not going to recommend it. I'm going to give it 2 stars. But I will be watching another season just because I'm invested in this as an idea.
Yeah.
And I'll report back for another mission debrief at that point.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Well, okay then. That's it. That is it for 279. I think we said this was. So
Yeah.
cool. Okay. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and thank you to anyone on Patreon, and thank you to everyone else on the other platforms like where are we? Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, actually. Yeah, a lot of places.
I heart you too, radio.
Yay! Radio just turned 100 earlier this month.
Hey.
Or something. It's older than that, but the official broadcast, I don't know, something on November 2nd happened with radio 100 years ago.
Nice.
I know. Okay. All right, everybody. See you next week. It'll be nearly December by then. Crazy.
Yeah.
All righty. Take care.
Bye.
Oh, wow, that's weird. It's a weird, mature way to say. Take care now.
Take care now.
Take care.
Have a great day.
Yeah. I hope everything's all right.
Be safe.
Be safe. Okay.
Take care of your friends and family.